Samhain, whichever way you choose to approach the idea that this is the season of spirits, we will, in keeping with that theme, now remind you that the title of this transmission is Ghosts. Now, we do not necessarily say this to make you feel spooky or scared, but to simply go through all the different ways in which individuals that are physically alive may experience what they perceive to be ghosts. So we will start with the idea that is more traditional, in the sense of a spirit that is capable of lowering its vibration enough to be perceived by the senses of the living, that you typically refer to as a ghost, a spirit, when it appears in your world, in your reality. The idea being that spirits who pass over, as you say, who die, who transition, may not always go all the way for a variety of reasons. Some may have unfinished business on earth. Some, because of their belief systems, may not have had a particular expectation or assumption of what they would experience in the so-called afterlife, and thus be a little bit confused about where they are. Some even may not even know they're dead and are wandering, looking for reasons why no one can hear them or see them. But now and then, either due to a lowering of their vibrational frequency, sort of similar to the idea of invisible ultraviolet light lowering its frequency to become visible as part of the visible spectrum of light, going down into violet and blue and so on and so forth. If they lower their frequency, they may become visible to those in the physical realm, or those in the physical realm may have enough sensitivity to perceive that spirit, even though it may not always be visible to everyone. But for some reason, they are still closely connected energetically to the physical realm of Earth, due to some of the reasons we have said or other reasons, and thus are still in their mind living among you, wandering among you, occupying the old houses, so on and so forth, what you typically refer to as a haunting, which doesn't in any way, shape, or form have to be malicious. Simply another person in another state, living in a place among the living. But the idea is that in seeing these beings, there is no way without communicating with them to know the reason why they may still be in what is referred to as the lower astral realm, very close to the vibration of physical reality, lowering their vibration enough to be perceived by physical beings. And this is the older and original definition of an exorcist, sort of a spirit psychologist, to communicate, find out why that being is in that state, why they're still lingering around Earth, which doesn't always have to be for a negative reason. Sometimes, when spirits cross over, and they act, in a sense, as guardians, spirit guides, for those who are still living, there may be reasons why they can learn to lower their vibration, to interact with the living in certain ways, even to the degree of appearing solid as a living physical being. This takes some skill and some practice on the part of spirits to do this, because once you are in spirit and in that high frequency vibration that is generally invisible to the living, it is actually not as natural for a spirit to go back down into the lower vibrations and become perceivable to the living. But there are those who may have reason to do so, to appear to the living in certain ways, to deliver messages, or perhaps as a protector, to alert living people to certain ideas, certain situations and circumstances, be it dangerous or not. So those spirits may have a high degree of need to lower their vibration to interact with the living and be perceived as living people until such time as they raise their vibration again and vanish before your eyes. And so there may be great need to do this, or they may simply have chosen to practice the ability of raising and lowering their vibration in order to interact with the living for a variety of their own reasons, or agreements they may have made with the living people with whom they interact. Now, beyond the idea of it actually being a spirit, a ghost per se, that you're interacting with, that is live in real time, as you say, there may be other effects that exist that can be interpreted as seeing a ghost. And one of them is the idea that in the fabric of space-time, everything is recorded. You might say, again, as people on your planet often name it, the Akashic records have a kind of video sort of ability to record things as well as audio or pure information. And all that information is available here and now because everything exists here and now. So again, for those that might be sensitive enough, might extend their senses far enough vibrationally to pick up on certain things that may have happened, linearly speaking, in the past, and perceive the recording, it's etched itself into the fabric of space and time. They may be seeing a recording of sorts, an echo of sorts of things that have been, or even will be, in your linear framework, and perceive that as a living ghost, even though it is simply an echo, a recording, something etched into the fabric of space-time, and is no longer actually present. These kinds of perceptions will usually appear to be repeatable. In other words, a person may say, oh yes, this place is haunted, and at midnight, every 3 days, you see this woman walking down the hallway into this room, and so on and so forth. And if that keeps repeating, it might not be what would be termed a living presence. It might actually be a recording, repeating over and over again when the conditions are right to trigger it, or when the conditions are right in a person's senses to perceive it. So a lot of things that repeat themselves that way may actually not be a living presence. It might be, but it may not be, because it could simply be etched into the fabric of space-time and repeating on a loop. Another way that people might perceive the idea of a ghost that is not a ghost in the classic sense is the idea of peering into parallel realities. Sometimes the so-called barriers between one reality and another will overlap, will weaken, will align vibrationally in some way, shape, or form to allow a person from your reality to actually perceive, although perhaps faintly and dimly, people in other realities. And therefore, in suddenly seeing an apparition wandering through your reality, you might perceive it or think it to be a ghost of someone who has passed over, but in fact you are actually seeing a faint representation of a person in another reality who is just going about their business, but may seem to you to be a ghost. And they may be able to perceive you that way at that moment as well, and go back to their friends and family with tales of having seen this ghost. And they're just describing you, because again, the veils between the different realities may have weakened for some reason at that point, because these fluctuations do often happen. There are doorways and portals that open to different dimensions on a regular basis, and some of them are random, and sometimes these openings and closings can allow one in your reality to peer into other realities temporarily until they close again. And sometimes these are interpreted as spirits and ghosts when they are not, in the classic sense, such a thing. But the idea of this season is to allow yourself to open up to the potential communication that can exist between you and spirits, spirit guides, family members who may have passed on, soul family groups who may never have even incarnated. It is the ability of your senses to stretch into that realm, especially if someone close to you has died, and is encouraging you to stretch your senses to connect with them in the spirit realm. This is the perfect season and timing to allow yourself to practice this. And this will be the subject of our meditation today, to give you an opportunity to do so. So, allow yourselves during your Halloween season while having fun playing scary, while having fun being spooked out, while having fun imagining all sorts of strange apparitions and so on and so forth. Keep in a corner of your mind the realization that this, in the vibrational cycles of Earth, is also when the veils are thin between the physical and the non-physical. Because remember, the physical is just a projection of consciousness. You yourselves, in a sense, are projections of consciousness as physical beings. So you yourselves, in a sense, are all ghosts, because your natural state is as a spirit, and you are just pretending to be in a physical, solid reality. So you are all ghosts in physical reality, which itself is a ghostly apparition of a consciousness idea that you are exploring. So in remembering that, it can amplify your ability to remember that all of these spirits are right with you and you are right with them, still in spirit with them, while dreaming that you are not. Allow yourself the opportunity to feel that and maintain that connection and increase that connection between yourself and the spirit realm, becoming more lucid and conscious about the fact that physical reality is, in a sense, just an apparition that you're playing around in. And allow yourself this opportunity, because as we do approach the idea of the window of contact and the increase in the splitting prism into different parallel versions of Earth, maintaining and increasing your connection to the spirit realm that you occupy now, right now, as your natural state, will serve you in a variety of ways that we will go into the closer we approach to the beginning of the window of open contact. And serve you with the idea of making contact, because many extraterrestrial beings are extra-dimensional beings and actually have attributes, just as our civilization does, of both physicality and spirit. And thus, the stronger you connect to the fact that you are a spirit, as you say, not so much a human having a spiritual experience, but a spirit having a human experience, you can identify with us more strongly every day and allow the idea of open contact to be a broader experience with many different kinds of beings who are not just physical extraterrestrials in the way that you think of us, but occupy many different dimensional planes just as you do, who are simply aware of the occupation of those planes just as you can become. And therefore blending and melding and merging the idea of physical and spirit in a way that allow you a great deal of freedom, a great deal of expression, and a great deal of being your true self and expanding what that really means in your world. So be the ghosts in this season that are physical, and have fun when we do our meditation to expand your senses and stretch your senses into the realm of spirit.
Beliefs exist as energy or in spirit level. Does human personality exist in spirit also?
Human personality can be projected from spirit. It doesn't really exist for the being in the same way that it does when you are experiencing a physical life. But the strength of the belief does have effects in energy and can echo into the lower astral realms easily, because the material of the lower astral is so vibrationally close to physical materiality. So the strength of a belief, the energy put into it, into holding it to be true, can ripple into the astral realm and to some degree a little bit leak into the etheric shell. Therefore, it can still have consequences, even though the being itself may not be experiencing those things in exactly the same way that it did when it was physical and holding on to those beliefs. But there is a gray area, a buffer zone, in which certain beliefs in physical reality can still have, to some degree, ripple effects or consequences in the lower astral vibrations.
And so those individuals who have passed, are in a low vibrational state, they're still wandering Earth in a sense, having negative emotions, they don't want to reincarnate. So they just wander around as ghosts in their miserable emotions, and they're very lonely. What can we do to help those beings?
Always send love, always send light, and allow yourself in a state of appreciation and gratitude for their existence to send a vibration that speaks of and shows of telepathically with images the idea of the beauty and glory of the spirit world, the full color. Send them that energy and allow them to experience whatever they're willing to absorb. But again, just like anything in physical reality, whatever you share with them doesn't mean you get to control or decide what they do with it. What they do with it is none of your business, because they have their own path, just like any physical being still. So the idea is to send them those images of a beautiful place, of their true self, their self-empowerment, wrap them in unconditional love to allow them to understand what the vibration of the spirit world is actually like, but then let them do with whatever you send, with whatever they will do with it.
This person is saying her grandmother passed away, and then she had a dream where she woke in the middle of the night and saw her as light. But she wasn't sure if it was a dream or not since she was so sleepy. Was the person dreaming or were they awake? And how can you tell when something is real?
Well, again, the idea that it may have partially occurred in a dream state or a partial dream state is simply an indication that it might be easier for the spirit to reach you in that state when some of your physical thought process is kind of out of the way or on hold. So it's still real. It's just that it might be an easier state for the spirit to make a connection in. So it may feel a little bit dreamy, a little bit out of physical reality. That doesn't mean it's not real.
And previously you said that in our near future, we'll be able to interact more with our loved ones who have departed. And can you expand on that? And why is it that some people have that ability now?
Well, again, either because it's part of their theme that they chose to experience in this life, or they chose to experience something that made their senses a little bit more acute than most. And again, because again, it's approaching the time for these things to be considered, that in and of itself can make the so-called barriers between physical and non-physical reality a little bit more transparent, in the same way that approaching death in physical life can make your senses more acute to the spirit world. Collectively, approaching certain kinds of thresholds where you're considering the expansion of consciousness and the existence of spirits and so on and so forth can actually allow many people within the physical collective to be able to be more sensitive to the fact that spirits are all around you and make it easier for you to start perceiving them.
How about lucid dreaming and seeing ghosts? How can this, or connecting with dead people, how can one use lucid dreaming in order to have a more heightened experience?
Well, again, in general, lucid dreaming is an experience you're having when you are aware of the fact that you are actually a spirit. Therefore, it's easier to connect to the spirit world because in a lucid dream, you are actually being more of your natural self.
Interesting. Would it help to like call out the name of the person that you want to connect with, or you just have to think of them while you're in a lucid dream?
You can use whatever technique works best for you.
Okay. Is it dangerous to communicate with spirits through the Ouija board? This person's friend had contacted something, but I think it was just an animal spirit or something, since it didn't make much sense to the other person.
Let me put it this way. You have certain symbols on your planet that have certain collective definitions attached to them, so to speak. So it's not in general dangerous, but the idea of the way most people in your society think of the Ouija board actually allows them to expand the idea into a more negative vibration, because that's what you bring to it going in for the most part. So in other words, that you've set yourself up by defining the Ouija board as a dangerous instrument. Therefore, that can create the sensation of connecting to ideas or things or entities that are less than ideal vibrationally. But it's not because connecting to spirit is dangerous, and it's not intrinsically because of the device that may be used as a permission slip to do so, but because of the definition you've imparted to that device that may lower your vibration and make you more aware of matching lower vibrational entities.
And this person is saying, my understanding is that chakras are of the etheric body, while ghosts are basically an astral body on the astral plane. Can you clarify this?
For the most part, what you perceive as a ghost is usually in the astral plane, yes. But the idea of the chakras is simply a physical manifestation of certain patterns of energy that go all the way up beyond the astral into the etheric and beyond. It's just the physical representation of the crystallization of certain consciousness patterns and energy connections that you have to the higher forms of yourself.
And are all ghosts that appear to humans originally from Earth, or do some beings come there from throughout the galaxy to join our etheric plane? Did any Greys die in our Earth timeline and become ghosts and or Anunnaki?
This is rare, but the answer in general is yes, it's possible.
Fascinating. And can our spirit guides appear as ghosts? Can they take on a physical ghost body in our reality? And if so, can they travel back and forth from the spirit realm to the body when they choose to?
Those that are very accomplished in doing that, yes, they can, and many times have. There are, again, certain stories that exist in your society where someone assumed they were interacting with a physical being who was helping them in some way, shape, or form, and later discovered that it turned out to actually be a ghost, a spirit guide, or what have you, that was simply capable of lowering their frequency long enough to be able to actually physically assist the living person. So yes, it's possible, and many spirits are accomplished in doing that. It's not necessarily absolutely common that spirits do that, for they may all have different proclivities in terms of what it is they feel necessary to learn to do, because it is an accomplishment to learn to go back and forth that easily between non-physical and physical reality. But some are quite adept at it.
Interesting. This person is saying that their understanding is that when our physical earthly body dies, we move to another dimension. From that new dimension, do we remember our earthly experience and those of our fellow humans that we left behind? Do we see their grief and try to console them by visiting them? Can our loved ones that have passed on manipulate electricity and move things to let us know they're visiting? If we don't remember our earthly experience, how do we learn from it?
No, you remember everything. Again, you don't lose anything. You have more heightened awareness of every single second of your experience on Earth. Every single second. You lose nothing. So yes, the answer is yes. Spirits can do the things that you're talking about. Again, depending upon how adept they are at doing that or how necessary it is for them to do those things.
Do some people practice being ghosts during different states, such as dreams or death edits or pre-birth?
Yes. Many people practice being spirit guides for the time when they will actually function as such, when you are in the dream state, when you're out of your body, so to speak.
And you've mentioned that some observations of ghosts are actually events which have been etched onto the fabric of space-time and are replaying themselves. What causes events to be recorded like this, and what triggers the replays?
Well, again, remember, nothing is lost. Information is everywhere. So the idea is that everything is accessible here and now from anything that's ever happened or will happen in any parallel reality. It just depends on your focus. The idea of what may cause a replay may be the energy of the person that is interacting with that particular frequency for some reason. Many things can trigger such a thing. collective consciousness can do it based on stories they've been told and legends they've been told about what it is they expect to experience in a particular location. That can trigger it. But many things can trigger it. It's, again, just like simply going to a place or being in a state where something is recorded and suddenly, for some reason, being of the correct vibration to suddenly have a replay.
Okay. And are there ghosts in the White House?
Yes.
Can you say anything else about it?
All we are allowed to say is that Dolly Madison often visits.
Interesting. So, well, this session, we pretty much focused on all the questions about ghosts and spirits and everything. And in the future, we'll come back to some other questions. But thank you so much for all your sharing today and helping us have a happy Halloween.
We wish you all a happy Halloween in the spirit of the season. And do remember that you are all spirits having a human experience. And on that note, please enjoy your upcoming meditation of the choices that you make. In this case, to some degree, better that it was done with a spirit than with a living person, where the consequences might have been even more drastic. But by being able to actually feel the spirit physically push you, you may have been given a chance to change your behavior without it necessarily affecting a physical person who would be more affected by it than the spirit was. And the spirit, in that sense, may simply have been demonstrating something without necessarily taking it personally.
But generally, the fact that they're in spirit means that they will have certainly the capability of experiencing what you're saying at a higher level.
Yes, and again, they may not have experienced it personally at all. It may simply have been a lesson being taught.
Interesting. This person is saying, my grandfather can see ghosts for about 1 year now, usually at nighttime, sometimes in the afternoon, and almost every night. He doesn't want to sleep. He wants to chase them away. They look at him, but don't talk. When he tries to reach them, they press something on their chest and disappear. Who are they?
These are not ghosts. These are interdimensional beings. So the idea may be that he senses that they're from somewhere else. They may feel quite alien to him. He may not be comfortable around them, simply because he may not be comfortable with the differences that they represent. The fact that they're pressing their chests indicates to some degree that they're using a type of technology which a ghost would not need to do. A ghost would simply vanish. So this is more the behavior of interdimensional beings that are connected to that person and attempting perhaps to remind him of his connection to them, which he may not be in a place to acknowledge at this particular point because of whatever belief systems he's holding on to. But it might be a way of goading him into exploring these things rather than chasing them away.
So as people get older also, particularly, let's say they're in the 5-year range of when they might pass or something like that, will this ability be more accessible if that person realizes it, to be able to connect or see ghosts and things like that?
If they realize, yes. It can happen, or it doesn't have to, but yes, it's quite possible that as you approach the idea of crossing the threshold from physical to non-physical reality, that your senses may start connecting to the other side, and you may be more acutely aware of the fact that other beings in spirit are connecting to you.
Could it potentially be similar to the idea of the way cats can be just sitting there and suddenly they're staring at watching something that appears to be from another dimension? Yeah. It might manifest that way?
Yes.
And how, if you haven't already answered this, maybe in detail, how can an entity or ghost move things around and turn things on like a faucet or a stove?
Again, a densification of the vibration of the entity can bring them closer to the vibration of physical reality, and therefore within a range in which they can actually interact with denser physical material because they have densified their own vibration to be sufficiently close to that frequency of physical reality to be able to manipulate physical objects.
Okay. This person has a question about ghosts who don't know they're ghosts. Can you elaborate on the people who pass who don't know they're ghosts? And does this happen to animals too? What is the best ceremony or blessing we can do to guide them and honor them in a way that assists them towards their highest good? And what does your society do to honor your loved ones once they've been elevated?
It is extremely rare that animals would experience that. Extremely rare, and for very specific reasons only. The idea is, again, if someone has a certain belief system that is in denial about the existence of an afterlife, it may be strong enough to prevent them from realizing that they're dead, but not for very, very long in terms of the idea of time as you know it. Because they will always have assistance from the other side to realize that their condition has changed and that they are capable of moving forward. So it's a temporary thing that can be helped both from the non-physical and the physical side if you connect to a spirit and encourage them to look around and explore and understand that their frequency has changed, that they've gone into a non-material world, so to speak. Again, this is the original purpose of what has been misunderstood and devolved into the concept of exorcism. It's simply ghost psychology, where you understand that someone is maybe having a difficult time because of their earthly belief systems in crossing over fully. But again, this is still, especially in this day and age, relatively rare. The reason why people may interact with ghosts, in many cases, is far beyond the idea now of the ghosts themselves not knowing that they're dead. So there are many other reasons and purposes for these interactions or for people perceiving them. Messages and so on that need to be delivered. Yes, a little bit of unfinished business, but again, this doesn't really take very long. Although sometimes a psychically sensitive person can help them with this by delivering messages to the living that allows the ghosts, the spirits, to know that the message has been delivered so they can move on. But again, in the overall population, this is relatively rare. But animals have very little reason to experience the idea. Perhaps an animal that has been severely physically abused might experience this momentarily. But again, an animal is much more connected to the idea of spirit and much more capable of immediately awakening into their natural state. Again, they may stick around for the purpose of interacting with a human that may need their assistance or their reflection, but that has nothing to do specifically with the animal's ability to know that it is dead.
And if some spirits don't realize that they've died, did they experience life review upon death?
In many cases, no. Or they may have experienced it as a dream, thinking that they're still alive and simply dreaming, or daydreaming, or hallucinating. But in some cases, no. They're not yet at that threshold where they have the awareness to recognize what it is they're experiencing as a life review. They may simply think that they're sort of stuck on a memory.
So basically, you can delay your life review by refusing to move towards the light or move into spirit fully?
Again, this is relatively rare, but yes, to some degree it's possible. The examples of the idea you call near-death experience and fully dying provide an illustration for this. Because the idea is that when people have a near-death experience, when they're not going to remain dead, they will usually have the life review sooner than a person who actually dies, because then they don't have to rush because they're going to come back. They're not going to come back, so they don't have to have the life review right away. But the people that are going to return in a near-death experience will usually have some degree of life review more quickly than those who truly pass on.
Interesting. And what about those individuals that perpetrate great evil on Earth in the sense of murder, mayhem, etc.? And I know that you had referred one time to Hitler having to sort of be put on ice in order to, I guess, integrate.
An energetic buffer is created to allow the being to go through what may seem to be the traumatic experience of the life review, because remember, in life review, there are no barriers. The cause and effect are all happening within you, and you experience everything from every point of view, including the people that were affected by the choices and the actions that you took. So you're experiencing those things as if you are that person being affected by your choices. And to a soul, that can be to some degree a traumatic experience, especially at the level that certain individuals may have perpetrated those kinds of negative actions. So a kind of cocoon or buffer is created. This is what is meant by being put on ice, to allow the soul to absorb these experiences and learn from them in a way that will benefit them so that they can make different choices from that point forward.
And when you say that the cause and effect, suppose they're in a position where they are telling other people to do things, and further down the chain, the actual actions that are so heinous are taking place.
Everything is connected. Everything is connected. Remember, time and space are illusions to some degree, even though they're real as experiences. But any ripple whatsoever that has any kind of an effect is experienced by those who have any connection to it, to whatever degree they have the connection to it.
So in the average person's transition and life review, they will experience the ripple effect of everything that they've done in their entire life, or only the ones that are really relevant for a learning experience?
Everything, but the ones that are truly relevant for a learning experience that is specific to them will stand out in certain ways. But beings experience literally every single second of the physical life. Again, some things will stand out more than others, but that doesn't mean they don't experience them. Even the absence of something that is the result of some action they took will be experienced by them.
And yet, since the timeline for things to be experienced while you're in spirit as opposed to being physical is different, what kind of a time does it take, or how much time does it take, in a sense, to go through a life review?
As your Einstein said, it's all relative. What to you may seem to be something that took years, may be experienced in the blink of an eye to the spirit in a life review. But it may seem to them that they're reliving the entire life as well. You have to understand that time is a funny thing, because it is a subjective idea and a relative idea. So the things that stand out as important may feel like they're taking more time to a spirit because of their importance and the need to focus on them, when in fact it may really be taking almost no time at all. So it's really completely subjective, and you cannot really make a measurement between physical and non-physical reality as to the amount of time that some experience actually takes. It's all absolutely subjective in spirit.
And also the idea that you're multi-functioning, so can many aspects of the life be happening simultaneously in your review, or it would appear more linear?
Again, it depends on what it is you need to focus on, what it is that gives you the lesson that you're attempting to extract. It can be experienced absolutely in the blink of an eye on every level simultaneously, or it can seem to stretch out depending on what you need.
And for those beings that choose to incarnate into what will ultimately be some sort of evil iconic spirit or evil iconic person, a figurehead that then wreaks havoc and destruction upon others. Why would a spirit choose that, or do they know going in that they're going to go through all these things you've just discussed as a result of making the choice to be that individual?
Like any question of this nature, it depends upon the being and it depends upon the purpose. There is the possibility that beings, as you know, can forget who they are, can get caught up in certain things in physical reality that prevent them from having more awareness and allowing them to act out in negative ways. It can also go through the entire spectrum, all the way up to, I'm going to play this role because of what it's going to do to awaken the consciousness of those who are affected by it. It really depends on the situation. It depends on the being. These are individual things, and you have to, again, as always, take it on a case-by-case basis.
So, for example, with Hitler, did he know before he came that he was going to play that role?
This is a tricky question to answer because there are so many levels to the being itself, a part of which, a small part of which, your history knew as Hitler in your particular parallel reality. So again, I can say yes and no.
Okay. Loved ones who have passed away, and how can we connect to the people we've known when they're no longer in their body? How can one go and find them when they aren't in time and space anymore? And if we do reach out, how can we know that we are actually connecting with them rather than our idea or image of them?
Well, first of all, they're right here. It's just that they're in a different vibrational frequency. So the idea is that everything is here and now, including the spirit world. So they're right here with you. Now, that doesn't mean that they're always paying attention, but the idea is that it simply takes a slight shift in frequency for them to be aware, to connect with you when you send them any kind of message, be it verbal, emotional, or a thought. You are connecting. They do receive it. You may not always receive what they send you back. You may not always be paying attention or be of the correct frequency, or your thoughts or beliefs may be getting in the way of receiving their message clearly, but they are always sending love and encouragement. And if you allow yourself to know that and be of that same frequency of love and connection, then just the very idea that you wish to connect lets you know that you are connecting. You just have to allow yourself to clear yourself out of any ideas, thoughts, or belief systems that would make it seem difficult to receive what they send you, and also pay attention to the synchronicity in your life, since that is often an easier way for spirits to get a message across to you. But again, they always receive. Now, whether it is your own thoughts or not, as long as you pay attention to the idea that what you are receiving, even from your own higher mind, or from the thought patterns within your physical mind, as long as they are encouraging, connective, expansive, positive in that sense, then you can rest assured that they are, at the very least, in harmony with the kinds of messages and thoughts that spirits would send to you. If there is any fear in them, anything that diminishes you, anything that negatively judges you, anything in that sense that feels disconnected, you are probably dealing with your own fear-based beliefs or a negative ego echo. So it's about the energy, the way in which the connection or message or information makes you feel, and that will assure you that you are making a connection in a positive way to the spirits, whether you are capable of literally perceiving their message or not.
Okay, thank you. Please enlighten us regarding the relationship between capturing orb images with digital cameras and the etheric realm. Are these orbs conscious entities? And if so, are they trying to communicate with us? What is it that they're trying to communicate with us? And is it necessary to use a certain type of flash mechanism for an orb image to appear?
Many devices on your planet, such as digital cameras, are simply capable of picking up certain frequencies that your eyes do not commonly see. The orbs can be many things. They can be probes from another dimension, in which case they wouldn't necessarily be conscious. They would be more like mechanisms made of energy, constructs designed for certain purposes of gathering information. But in its natural state, a spirit will usually return to the shape of an orb. It doesn't necessarily project what you would recognize as a bodily image when it's in its natural state, though it can do so. It can shift into that form if necessary. So sometimes the orbs will be representative of spirits that may just be around you all the time, or may be coming and going. And if you are sensitive enough to perceive them, or your devices are sensitive enough to perceive them, they don't necessarily always have a message for you. You may just be perceiving what is around all the time and breaking through that barrier that allows you to perceive that they are always here, just on a different frequency.
Can you tell us what ghosts are made of? And you've said that they are on the etheric shell of the shell's birth. So is there like a ghostly periodic table of elements within their shell? And are ghosts made of different materials on different planets?
The idea is that these shells are quite common on many different planets and would be very similar in terms of a ghost on one planet or a ghost on another. There may be some slight differences depending upon the vibrational frequencies that are necessary for beings to perceive them or for them to express themselves in different cultures and different civilizations and different worlds and dimensions. But the idea in general is to understand that everything that you think of as an element in your physical reality, your so-called periodic table, also have energy components, non-physical components. Remember, as above, so below. Everything has a non-physical template that allows the physical template to base itself upon. So the idea is that it may not be as many elements necessary to be expressed energetically in ghostly material, but overall, it is simply a refined version of physical matter. In other words, the idea of physical reality is a densification of the idea of what we call electromagnetheric energy. Therefore, it can have a more refined, higher vibratory representation, or it can have a denser, more crystallized representation that you would recognize as physical matter, and any level in between. So the idea of a ghost appearing physically, or even to some degree to your senses, even transparently, would simply be a dialing down of the frequency, a lowering of the frequency of the same material you're made of in general, maybe with not as many components. But the idea is that you all are made of electromagnetheric energy. It is kind of the idea that is recognized or labeled as ectoplasm when it is of a certain frequency densification. And to strengthen that densification would render it down into physical matter, would take on more corporeal elements that are designed to represent itself as a dense crystallization depending upon the elements that are involved. But the idea is that it's all kind of the same matter at different density levels. Again, by a crude analogy, much the same as the idea of ice and water, liquid water and steam are all the same element, just at different frequencies. So it's sort of similar to that idea.